The galactic conflict erupts. The metallic chime of the medical bay doors, sliding open, barely registered in Dr. Elena Reeves' consciousness as she hunched over her desk, engrossed in the latest batch of test results. The stark white lighting of Outpost Epsilon, a sprawling space station on the fringes of human-controlled space, cast harsh shadows across her face, accentuating the dark circles under her eyes, a testament to the long hours she'd been working. Dr. Reeves. A tentative voice broke through her concentration. Elena looked up, blinking away the fatigue. Her assistant, a young Endorian named Thala, stood in the doorway, antennae twitching nervously. "What is it, Thala?" Elena asked, straightening in her chair. "You need to see this," Thala said, gesturing towards the main atrium of the medical bay. Curiosity piqued. Elena rose and followed her assistant. As they entered the atrium, Elena's eyes widened. The typically orderly space was in chaos. Every bed was occupied, and makeshift cots lined the walls. Beings of various species, humans, Andorians, Tellarites, and others she couldn't immediately identify, filled the room, many sporting injuries or showing signs of extreme stress. "What happened?" Elena demanded, already moving to the nearest patient, a Tellarite with a nasty plasma burn on his arm. Thala kept pace, her voice low and urgent. War broke out between the Xeraxian Empire and the Federated Planets. The news just came through. These are the first wave of refugees. Elena's hand stilled for a moment as the weight of Thala's words sank in. War. It had been brewing for years, tensions rising between the expansionist Xeraxian Empire and the loosely allied Federated Planets. But for it to finally erupt. "Right," Elena said, pushing aside her shock to focus on the immediate crisis. "Triage protocols. Get every available staff member here now. We need to sort critical cases from stable ones." As Thala hurried off to carry out her orders, Elena moved from patient to patient, her trained eye quickly assessing injuries and prioritizing care. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity, setting bones, closing wounds, administering pain relief, and stabilizing critical patients. It wasn't until the flow of new arrivals began to slow that Elena had a moment to catch her breath. She leaned against a wall, running a hand through her short, dark hair, now damp with sweat. The atrium buzzed with the low murmur of voices and the occasional beep of medical equipment. "Doctor," a gruff voice called out. Elena turned to see Captain Jared Hawkins, the human commander of Outpost Epsilon, striding towards her. His usually immaculate uniform was rumpled, and his face bore the same signs of exhaustion that Elena felt in her bones. "Captain," Elena acknowledged, straightening up. "What's our status?" Hawkins' expression was grim. "Not good. We're getting reports of battles breaking out across 3 sectors. The station's at maximum capacity, and we're still receiving distress calls." Elena frowned. "We can't turn people away, Jared. Not when they're fleeing for their lives." "I know, Elena," Hawkins sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. "But we're a neutral outpost. We weren't prepared for this. Resources are already stretched thin, and if we're not careful, we could get pulled into the conflict ourselves." Before Elena could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights began to flash, casting an eerie glow over the medical bay. "Attention all personnel," a computerized voice announced. "Unidentified vessels approaching. All non-essential staff report to designated shelter areas. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Hawkins' hand flew to his communicator. "Bridge, report." As the captain received his update, Elena's mind raced. They needed to secure the patients, especially those too injured to move. She turned to give orders to her staff, but was cut short by Hawkins' sharp intake of breath. "Elena," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We've got incoming. A Xeraxian battlecruiser and 2 Federated planet destroyers. They're on an intercept course." Elena's blood ran cold. "Here. But we're neutral. We're a medical outpost, for crying out loud." Hawkins shook his head. Doesn't matter. They're demanding we turn over any enemy nationals we're harboring. Both sides. That's insane, Elena protested. Half these people are civilians. And the injured, we can't just. The interior of the shuttle was cramped, filled with medical supplies, and a handful of critical patients strapped into makeshift beds. Elena carefully set down the alien child, who immediately curled into a tight ball, those large, iridescent eyes darting fearfully around the unfamiliar space. Strap in, Zara called from the pilot's seat. This is going to be rough. Elena had barely secured herself and the child when the shuttle lurched violently, breaking free of the doomed station. Through the view screen, she watched in horror as Outpost Epsilon, her home for the past 5 years, receded into the distance, sporadic explosions blooming across its surface like deadly flowers. As Zara skillfully maneuvered the shuttle away from the battle, Elena turned her attention to their unexpected passenger. Now that the immediate danger had passed, she could properly assess the child's condition. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling beside the trembling figure. "You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" The child remained silent, but those captivating eyes locked onto Elena's face. Up close, Elena could see that what she had initially taken for fear was actually a mixture of terror and pain. The child's lavender skin had an unhealthy ashen quality to it, and there was a slight wheeze to its breathing. Elena's medical instincts kicked in. "Zara," she called out, "I need a full bioscan on our little friend here. Something's not right." As Zara programmed the shuttle's medical systems to perform the scan, Elena gently coaxed the child to uncurl. "I'm going to examine you, okay? I promise I won't hurt you. I'm here to help." Slowly, tentatively, the child relaxed enough for Elena to begin her examination. As her hands moved carefully over the small body, she frowned. There was definitely something wrong, but without knowing more about the child's species, it was hard to pinpoint exactly what. The bioscanner beeped, and Elena moved to check the results. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Zara," she said, her voice tight, "we've got a problem. This child, it's a Zaraxian." Zara's head snapped around, her eyes wide with disbelief. "A Zaraxian? Here? But how?" "I don't know," Elena cut in. "But that's not the worst of it. According to these scans, the child is suffering from severe radiation poisoning. If we don't do something soon." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew the implications. Radiation poisoning was nasty business, often fatal if not treated quickly and aggressively. Zara's expression hardened. "Elena, you know the protocols. We're not equipped to treat enemy combatants, let alone their civilians. We should rendezvous with a federated medical ship and hand the child over to them." Elena felt a surge of anger at her friend's words. "Are you serious? This is a child, Zara, an innocent. Since when do we turn our backs on someone who needs our help, regardless of where they come from?" "Since we're at war," Zara shot back. "Do you have any idea what kind of trouble we could get into for harboring the Zaraxian? We could be charged with treason." Elena stood her ground. "I took an oath, Zara. We both did. To preserve life, to do no harm. That doesn't come with exceptions for species or political affiliations." For a long moment, the two women stared at each other, the weight of their choices hanging heavy in the air between them. Finally, Zara's shoulders slumped. "Fine," she sighed. "But if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. And quickly." Elena nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Zara. I know this isn't easy." As they set to work, Elena's mind raced. Treating radiation poisoning was challenging enough in humans. For an alien species she knew next to nothing about, it would be like flying blind. But she had to try. Over the next few hours, as Zara piloted them through the chaotic space lanes filled with fleeing refugees and military vessels, Elena pored over the scant medical data they had on Zaraxian physiology. She synthesized treatments, adjusting dosages on the fly, all while monitoring the child's deteriorating condition. It was during one of these treatments that the child spoke for the first time. As Alina carefully administered another dose of anti-radiation meds, she heard a small, weak voice. "Kira," the child whispered. Alina paused, looking down at those huge, pain-filled eyes. "Is that your name?" "Kira." The child, Kira, gave a tiny nod. "It's nice to meet you, Kira," Alina said, managing a smile. "I'm Alina. I'm a doctor, and I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel better. Can you tell me how you ended up on the station?" Kira's feather-like head appendages rustled slightly, a movement Alina was beginning to associate with distress. "Papa," he said. "Hide. Bad people coming. He put me in a box. Said someone would find me." Alina's heart clenched. A parent, desperate to save their child, had smuggled Kira onto a neutral station, hoping someone would find and help them. And now that parent was likely dead, another casualty in a senseless war. "You're very brave, Kira," Alina said softly, fighting back tears. "And your papa was very brave too. He wanted you to be safe." A weak smile flickered across Kira's face, but it quickly turned into a grimace of pain. The child's body spasmed, and alarms began to blare from the medical equipment. "Alina," Zara called out in alarm. "What's happening?" "She's crashing," Alina replied, her training kicking in as she rushed to stabilize her patient. "The radiation damage is spreading faster than we can treat it. We need to put her in stasis, now." As they worked frantically to save Kira's life, Alina felt a surge of determination. This child, this innocent caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts, deserved a chance at life. And Alina was going to make sure she got it, no matter the cost. Hours passed in a blur of medical procedures and tense moments. Finally, they managed to stabilize Kira and place her in a makeshift stasis pod. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy them time. Exhausted, Alina slumped into the co-pilot's seat next to Zara. "Where are we?" she asked, noticing for the first time that the view outside the shuttle had changed. Instead of the chaos of warring fleets, they were surrounded by the serene emptiness of deep space. Zara's expression was grim. "I've been monitoring the comm channels. It's bad, Alina. The war is spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Every major system is choosing sides. There's nowhere safe to go." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. "What about Earth? Surely they're still neutral." Zara shook her head. "Earth joined the Federated Planets Alliance an hour ago. If we show up there with a Zeraxian child..." The implications hung heavy in the air. They were outlaws now, in a galaxy where neutrality was rapidly becoming a luxury no one could afford. "So what do we do?" Alina asked, the weight of their situation settling on her shoulders. Zara was quiet for a moment, then turned to face her friend. "There are rumors of a hidden medical facility, run by a group of doctors and scientists who refuse to take sides in the war. They call themselves the Galactic Health Coalition. If anyone can help us treat Kira without turning us in, it's them." "And how do we find this secret facility?" A hint of a smile played at the corners of Zora's mouth. "I have a contact. An old friend from medical school. Last I heard, she joined the coalition. If I can get a message to her." Alina nodded, hope stirring in her chest for the first time since they'd fled the station. "Do it. And in the meantime, we'll keep Kira stable and stay off the radar." As Zara set to work on contacting her old friend, Alina moved to check on Kira's stasis pod. Looking down at the peaceful face of the alien child, Alina made a silent vow. No matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what sacrifices she had to make, she would see this through. In a galaxy torn apart by war and hatred, she would be a beacon of hope and compassion. Little did she know, her decision to save one small life was about to change the course of the war itself. A beacon of hope. Days blurred into weeks as Alina and Zara navigated their small medical shuttle through the treacherous expanses of war-torn space. Every jump, every maneuver was a calculated risk. They dodged patrols, skirted battle lines, and slipped through asteroid fields, all while keeping Kira stable in her makeshift stasis pod. Elena spent her waking hours poring over what little data they had on Zeraxian physiology, desperately searching for a breakthrough that could save the child's life. When exhaustion finally claimed her, her dreams were haunted by Kira's large, pain-filled eyes and the faces of those they'd left behind on Outpost Epsilon. It was during one such fitful sleep that Zara's excited voice jolted her awake. "Elena, wake up. I've got a response." Rubbing the sleep from her eyes, Elena stumbled to the cockpit. "Your contact," they replied. Zara nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and trepidation. "It's from Dr. Lyra Voss. She's with the Galactic Health Coalition. They're willing to help us, but what?" Elena pressed, sensing her friend's hesitation. Zara took a deep breath. "Their facility is hidden on Novaris Prime. It's in the heart of the war zone, Elena. Getting there won't be easy." Elena's heart sank. Novaris Prime was a small, resource-rich planet that had become a major flashpoint in the conflict between the Zeraxian Empire and the Federated Planets. The space around it was a maelstrom of battling fleets and minefields. For a moment, doubt crept into Elena's mind. Was it worth risking everything? Their lives, their careers, their very freedom, for one alien child. But then she remembered Kira's brave little smile, the trust in those iridescent eyes. She thought of the parent who had sacrificed everything to give their child a chance at life. "We have to try," Elena said firmly. "For Kira, for all the innocents caught in this senseless war, someone has to stand for what's right." Zara nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "I had a feeling you'd say that. I've already plotted a course. If we're lucky, we can slip through the Cassiopean Nebula and approach Novaris Prime from the far side. With any luck, the fighting fleets won't even notice us." As they made their final preparations, Elena checked on Kira one last time. The child floated peacefully in the stasis field, unaware of the dangers that lay ahead. "Hold on, little one," Elena whispered. "We're almost there." The journey to Novaris Prime pushed their skills, and their luck, to the limit. They navigated through the shifting, luminous gases of the Cassiopean Nebula, the shuttle sensors nearly useless in the electromagnetic interference. More than once, they narrowly avoided patrolling ships, ducking behind asteroids or cutting power to drift silently through space. As they approached Novaris Prime, the true scale of the conflict became apparent. The space around the planet was a chaos of explosions, weapons fire, and debris. Massive capital ships exchanged broadsides while swarms of fighters darted between them. "There's no way through," Zara said, her voice tight with tension. "We'll be vaporized before we get halfway to the planet." Elena stared at the battle raging before them, her mind racing. Then an idea struck her. The crazy, desperate idea, but one that just might work. "What if we don't try to slip through?" she said slowly. "What if we go right down the middle?" Zara looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "That's suicide." "No, listen," Elena insisted. "We're in a medical shuttle. Both sides have standing orders not to fire on medical vessels. If we broadcast a general distress call and head straight for the planet, neither side will want to risk being seen attacking us. And if they decide to board us instead," Zara countered. Elena's expression hardened. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, it's our best chance. For us and for Kira." After a moment of tense silence, Zara nodded. "All right, let's do it." With trembling hands, Elena keyed in the emergency broadcast. "This is the medical shuttle Hippocrates. We have critical patients aboard and are declaring a medical emergency. All vessels, please clear a path. We are proceeding to Novaris Prime for emergency landing." For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, miracle of miracles, a path began to open up. Ships from both sides moved aside, creating a narrow corridor through the battlefield. "It's working," Zora breathed, guiding their shuttle forward. "I can't believe it's actually working." They threaded their way through the chaos, acutely aware of the massive warships looming on either side. Weapons capable of vaporizing entire cities were trained on them, held in check only by the thin veneer of civility that their medical status provided. As they entered Novaris Prime's atmosphere, Alina allowed herself a moment of hope. They were going to make it. They were going to save Kira. But the universe had one last challenge in store for them. Alarms blared as their shuttle suddenly lurched, caught in the gravitational pull of a Zeraxian dreadnought that had moved too close. "We're caught in a tractor beam," Zera yelled, fighting with the controls. "They're pulling us in." Alina's mind raced. If they were boarded, if Kira was discovered. No, she couldn't let that happen. Not when they were so close. In that moment, Alina made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Open a channel to that ship," she ordered. Zara complied, her expression a mix of confusion and fear. "This is Dr. Alina Reeves of the medical shuttle Hippocrates," Alina said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I am declaring diplomatic sanctuary for all aboard this vessel. We have in our care a Zeraxian child suffering from severe radiation poisoning. This child is the key to peace between our peoples." The tractor beam wavered but held firm. Then, a gruff voice came over the comm. "Explain yourself, human." Alina took a deep breath. "This child is proof that we can overcome our differences, that compassion knows no borders. I, a human doctor, have risked everything to save a Zeraxian life. If we can do this in the midst of war, imagine what we could accomplish in peace." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, miraculously, the tractor beam released them. "Proceed to the surface, Hippocrates," the Zeraxian commander said, his tone unreadable. "But know that we will be watching." As they resumed their descent, Zera turned to Alina, her eyes wide. "Do you realize what you've done? You've just forced both sides to acknowledge our mission. If either of them moves against us now, they'll be violating their own protocols of war." Alina nodded grimly. "Let's just hope it's enough to get us to the Coalition facility." Their landing on Novaris Prime was met with a flurry of activity. Coalition doctors, led by Dr. Lyra Voss, rushed to meet them, quickly but carefully transferring Kira to their advanced medical facilities. In the days that followed, as Kira underwent treatment, something remarkable began to happen. News of the human doctor who had risked everything to save a Zeraxian child spread through both fleets. It sparked debates, ignited hopes long thought extinguished. Slowly, tentatively, diplomats from both sides began to reach out. The fighting around Novaris Prime ceased as a temporary truce was called. Representatives from the Zeraxian Empire and the Federated Planets converged on the Coalition facility, ostensibly to check on Kira's progress, but really to feel out the possibility of peace talks. And at the center of it all was Alina, exhausted but determined, working tirelessly alongside Coalition doctors to save Kira's life. 2 weeks after their arrival on Novaris Prime, Alina stood by Kira's bedside. The child's color had improved, the ashen tones replaced by a healthier lavender. Those large, iridescent eyes blinked open, focusing on Alina's face. "Alina," Kira said softly, her voice stronger than it had been since that first day on the station. Alina smiled, tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. "Hey there, brave one. How are you feeling?" "Better," Kira said, managing a small smile. You saved me." Alina took Kira's small hand in hers. "We all did. Humans, Zeraxians, and everyone in between. We came together to save you, Kira. And in doing so, we might just have saved ourselves." As if to underscore her words, a commotion outside the medical bay caught their attention. Alina looked up to see a group of diplomats, human, Zeraxian, and various other species, entering the room. Their faces were solemn but hopeful. Alina looked from the diplomats to Kira, then to Zara, who stood beaming in the doorway. In that moment, she realized that sometimes the greatest victories come not from grand battles or political maneuverings, but from simple acts of kindness and the unwavering belief in the value of every life. As the diplomats filed out, promising to return later, Elena turned back to Kira. The child's eyes were drooping, exhaustion setting in. "Rest now, little one," Elena said softly. "When you wake up, it'll be to a galaxy taking its first steps toward peace, and it's all because of you." As Kira drifted off to sleep, Elena stood watch, a silent guardian. Outside the window, the fleets that had been locked in mortal combat now floated peacefully side by side. It was a new dawn for the galaxy, born from the compassion of one doctor and the life of one small child. In the vastness of space, amidst the echoes of war, a spark of hope had been ignited. And Elena knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, that spark would continue to burn bright, a beacon guiding them all toward a better future.